a man known as Vito Moretti. He was the head of a notorious Mafia family that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Vito was a large man, both in stature and presence, with piercing dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to the souls of those around him. His reputation wasn't built on just his cunning or strength. It stemmed from his strict rules and the unyielding control he maintained over his organization. Every decision was precise, every reaction calculated, creating an environment where betrayal led to swift and harsh consequences. Vito's world was one of opulence, adorned with fine suits tailored to perfection, luxurious cars that glided silently through the streets, and lavish parties held in extravagant venues. His mansion was a fortress, equipped not only with artful decorations, but also with layers of security designed to keep unwanted guests at bay. This lifestyle painted a vibrant picture of success that enveloped him in a cocoon of wealth. Yet it was a double-edged sword, isolating him from the very world he once knew. The city outside buzzed with energy and life, its streets filled with families hustling through their day, shops displaying bright colors and lively music spilling out into the air. For Vito, these common experiences were merely glimpses of distant memories. He rarely roamed the streets like everyone else. Instead, he oversaw everything from behind glass walls, viewing life through prisms of business deals and criminal enterprises. Within this chaotic landscape operated his staff, essential players in maintaining the facade of his empire. Among them was Maria, his loyal maid. Maria was dedicated and diligent, taking pride in her job despite its dangers. She kept Vito's mansion gleaming while juggling her own challenges as a single mother. Her life outside these grand walls had its own share of troubles. It was where she faced struggles that seemed insurmountable, mainly revolving around her young daughter, Sophie. Vito barely noticed Maria most days. She blended into the background like furniture in his ornate home. However, there came a moment when her daughter caught his attention. A small figure seen scampering through the halls in an old dress that appeared rather worn out. Days turned into weeks as he began noticing Sophie wearing the same dress repeatedly for 47 days. His mind raced with questions. Why did this child wear such a tattered dress? Did they not have enough money for new clothes? As someone who had everything he could ever want or desire, materially speaking, it shocked him to see such disparity cloaked within his own domain. Here he was, sipping expensive wine amidst crystal glasses, while a little girl struggled just outside the door. This observation stirred something inside him, a knot of unease at the sight of innocence marred by hardship. It wasn't long before curiosity morphed into concern. For a man who rarely leaned toward compassion or empathy, this feeling prompted him to act in ways he wouldn't have imagined before. As days rolled on without change for Sophie and Maria, Vito allowed himself to reflect on what he saw. Sitting in his luxuriously decorated study or at gatherings where laughter echoed amid clinking glasses felt different now. The image of Sophie's smile waning because of material insufficiency began haunting him more than any rival sneering at his empire ever could. In Vito's heart stirred questions larger than those tangled within criminal activities. Who would care if he ruled over an empire when darkness lurked just outside those wrought iron gates? What did it matter if terrible things happened under the cover of night, when unsung heroes like Maria were busy fighting battles no one else recognized? Shaking off an uncomfortable sensation gnawing at him, an emotion he hadn't felt in years, Vito steeled himself for what lay ahead. His life had always been organized around control. Now something far greater than business intrigues beckoned him toward unknown territory. He had resolved to delve deeper into understanding Maria's life, to visit their home and witness firsthand what existed beyond his gilded prison walls, and perhaps discover truths with implications he'd never considered before. Intrigued by this new pursuit, yet wary about invading their privacy, Vito prepared for an exploration that might forever alter his perception of wealth and what truly constitutes power beyond riches. Compassion for those less fortunate than himself. Little did he know how profound this journey would become on both sides. Maria was not just a maid in Vito Moretti's mansion. She was a devoted mother striving to provide a better life for her daughter, Sophie. Every morning, before the sun peeked over the horizon, she would rise with determination. The clatter of pots and pans in the kitchen often mingled with warm sunlight filtering through the windows, creating a comforting atmosphere that masked the challenges they faced outside those walls. Maria worked tirelessly to keep the lavish home spotless, but her heart lay in nurturing Sophie. Their small apartment echoed with laughter and stories shared over simple meals. Each evening, after Maria had finished her long day at work, she would curl up on their worn-out sofa with Sophie, reading bedtime stories filled with adventure and hope. Despite their meager means, Maria made sure her daughter felt loved and cherished. Sophie was a bright-eyed girl with an imagination that soared beyond their modest surroundings. She loved to draw pictures of castles and magical lands, where every character wore beautiful clothes and lived happily ever after. Maria would often watch her create these worlds, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. Pride in Sophie's creativity and sadness, knowing they struggled to afford even basic necessities. Their bond was strong, built upon shared dreams and whispered secrets. Maria often told Sophie that love could overcome any obstacle, even when their refrigerator was nearly empty, or when bills piled up on the small kitchen table. As long as we have each other, Maria would say softly, we can face anything. However, as days turned into weeks, it became increasingly difficult for Maria to maintain this facade of strength. The weight of financial burdens pressed heavily on her shoulders. Her job at the mansion provided just enough to cover rent and basic supplies, but sometimes it felt like an uphill battle. With each passing day, Maria watched as Sophie's clothes grew more worn and tattered, particularly the dress that seemed to cling to her like a second skin. It was an old dress, once bright and cheerful, now faded and frayed around the edges. Despite its condition, Sophie wore it proudly, twirling in front of mirrors and imagining herself as a princess ready for adventure. In her innocent mind, the dress became a symbol of resilience rather than lack, a way to express who she was inside, despite what others saw on the outside. Maria noticed how Sophie's spirit shone through adversity. However, seeing her daughter wear the same dress day in and day out began to gnaw at Maria's heart. She wanted so desperately to provide more for Sophie, but often found herself trapped by circumstances beyond her control. The guilt weighed heavily on her as she watched other children wear new clothes that sparkled with possibilities, while Sophie's dress grew increasingly faded. One afternoon, as they sat together at home after school, Sophie excitedly pulled out a crumpled piece of paper from her backpack, a drawing she'd made during art class. It depicted two figures holding hands under a tree with colorful flowers blooming around them. Above them were scribbled words, "I love you, Mommy." Maria's heart swelled with emotion as she took in the sight of Sophie's artwork. It reminded her that despite their struggles, moments like these were what truly mattered. The love they shared transcended material possessions. They had created their own little world filled with dreams that could not be taken away by financial hardship or societal judgments. In those quiet moments together, when laughter filled their small apartment, Maria found solace. She vowed to continue working hard, not only for their survival, but also for Sophie's happiness and future. After all, every sacrifice she made came from deep within her heart. Each day was an opportunity to teach her daughter about perseverance and love. But as Vito Moretti began noticing Sophie's worn dress more frequently during his observations at the mansion, he could not see the love behind it, as Maria did, nor understand how it represented resilience in such challenging times. To him, it illustrated disparity, a reminder that not everyone shared in his wealth or luxury. Little did he know that beneath that simple dress lay an entire world fueled by dreams, love, and unbreakable bonds between a mother and daughter who faced life's challenges together head-on, even when those challenges felt insurmountable. As Vito prepared to venture deeper into understanding their lives beyond his gilded gates, he would soon discover how profound this connection truly was, and how it reflected upon his own choices in ways he never expected. As the days passed, Vito Moretti went about his daily routine of overseeing his vast empire, but there was an unsettling sensation that began to linger in the back of his mind. At first, it was just a passing glance, a momentary observation during one of his many business meetings held in the grand dining room. However, each time he saw Sophie scurrying through the mansion's halls, her familiar figure became etched into his memory. On that particular day, as the midday sun lit up the space around him, Vito found himself taking a more intentional look at Sophie. She darted past him once more, her laughter bubbling like a soft melody. But what caught his eye was the dress she wore, threadbare and washed out. Each time he saw her, she donned the same outfit, a faded garment that seemed perpetually stuck to her tiny frame. It was almost as if the dress had become part of her, a second skin she wrapped around herself like a shield against the world. 47 days it had been since he first noticed this subtle detail, and with every encounter, confusion swirled within him. Vito was a man accustomed to control and wealth. He wielded power over a world filled with riches and luxury. Seeing a child wear the same dress for so many days dug into something deep within him, a question that remained unanswered and lodged itself into his consciousness. Why? Curiosity ignited his mind. Hadn't Maria been one of the best maids he'd ever employed? She kept his mansion pristine, ensuring that everything was in its place. She had served him diligently without fail, always working the long hours left for her after looking after her own home. Why then was her daughter so lacking in simple necessities? The notion puzzled him further. Surely Maria could find a way to buy Sophie some new clothes. Had he overlooked something? Was there something he didn't know about their lives? He spent moments trying to dissect the scene. Sophie twirling joyfully in her old dress, unbothered and full of life, while Vito felt a growing discontent in the pit of his stomach. To him, material wealth was everything, an emblem of success illustrated by fine suits and dazzling parties he frequently hosted. Yet here stood a picture of innocence coded in hardship, reflecting a life that contrasted sharply with his own. Vito's powerful stature felt heavy as he shifted in his chair, contemplating the implications behind Sophie's attire. It painted a stark picture of hardship overlaid with resilience. It highlighted stark disparities between their worlds. While he adorned himself in extraordinary fabrics and attended lavish soirees, here was little Sophie who managed to smile even when her clothes spoke of struggle. On another occasion, As he lounged in his opulent study surrounded by rare books and priceless art, the echoes of laughter brought him back to reality. That unmistakable giggle was Olivia's, a sound so innocent yet so out of place in his fortress of wealth. He found himself staring blankly into space, wondering what it would be like to have nothing but your spirit to keep you afloat. Questions scratched at the surface of Vito's mind like thorns. How could he have not seen the suffering right under his nose? Did he really live so detached from humanity that children like Sophie existed beyond his understanding? The realization made him uncomfortably aware of just how protective he'd been with his resources while neglecting those who worked tirelessly for him. As Sophie danced and spun around under elements of enchantment only children understand, Vito felt an internal pull toward empathy that he hadn't experienced in years. The sight became an unsettling reminder that, despite all his riches and acquisitions, money could never truly buy happiness if it overshadowed basic human values of compassion and understanding. The revelations simmering within him began igniting urgency. He needed to understand their circumstances better. He didn't want to merely feel pity or curiosity from afar. He wanted insight into their lives outside the mansion's elaborate walls. With this newfound determination swirling in his heart, Vito finally resolved to take action. He would dig deeper into their lives. He would seek Maria out and learn more about Sophie, the girl whose resilience echoed through the fabric of her tattered dress. What lay beneath the surface might very well alter his perspective forever, and maybe open doors toward unexpected compassion as he sought answers beyond material possessions. Unbeknownst to him, this decision would soon become a turning point, not just for him, but for Maria and Sophie as well, potentially challenging everything Vito had ever believed about success and happiness in a world driven by wealth alone. Vito Moretti had always been a man of control, navigating a world filled with power and money. Yet since he began noticing Sophie's threadbare dress, a shift had occurred within him. The walls he fortified around his heart felt less impenetrable as curiosity and empathy seeped through the cracks. He found himself compelled to learn more about Maria's life, the woman who kept his mansion in pristine condition while quietly battling her own hardships. Determined to uncover the truth behind their circumstances, Vito decided on a discreet investigation. He understood that stepping too deeply into their lives could disturb the delicate balance of their roles. After all, he was their employer, one who wielded significant influence over many aspects of his employees' lives. Therefore, the last thing he wanted was to come across as intrusive or threatening. Days turned into weeks as he observed Maria and Sophie from a distance. Vito began noting small details: Maria's tired eyes and the way she hurriedly prepared breakfast each morning before heading to her long day of labor. He watched how she meticulously cleaned every corner of his home, her movements brisk, but with an underlying hint of fatigue that echoed a life burdened by responsibilities. He paid close attention to Sophie whenever she crossed his path, the joy in her laughter contrasting sharply with the worn fabric clinging to her body. Each twirl she made ignited questions in Vito's mind. Did she have enough food? What did they do for fun? Did Maria ever get help or comfort beyond the confines of her work? To gather information without seeming suspicious, Vito leveraged discreet means. He instructed one of his most trusted associates to casually engage with Maria during her breaks at work. This associate posed as an interested observer, feigning interest in inconsequential matters, while subtly steering conversations toward family and well-being. Over time, this associate learned that Maria lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of town, far from the splendor of Vito's mansion, where he resided in opulence. It became clear that making ends meet was a constant struggle. Despite working tirelessly for him, she often faced sleepless nights worrying about bills and expenses. One evening, after observing yet another tired yet determined Maria rush out after completing her chores at the mansion, her hands still stained with cleaning products, Vito felt an urgency growing within him. He needed more than mere hearsay. He craved first-hand knowledge about their lives beyond what was whispered between colleagues or gleaned from cursory glances. Thus began his quiet reconnaissance mission outside the gilded halls of his empire. Under cover of night and detachment from his usual circle, he ventured toward Maria's neighborhood, a modest area filled with small buildings and families doing their best to make it through each day. As he roamed these unfamiliar streets, Vito felt out of place amidst this simplicity that contrasted sharply against the lavishness he inhabited daily. He paused outside Maria's apartment building one evening after dark, when shadows danced under streetlights, illuminating ragged edges and corners, where dreams often went unnoticed. With careful observation, Vito noted children playing faintly in front yards, laughing voices echoing across fences while parents chatted nearby. In those moments, it struck him how different life could be depending on fortune or circumstance. One building held laughter, while another bore silent burdens. Days passed as Vito studied their daily routines from afar. Time crawled by as each moment illuminated deeper levels of understanding beneath unpleasant realities they'd navigated together against all odds. He learned how single-minded determination drove Maria every day. She would leave for work before dawn broke, only to return home long after sunset, carrying whatever food she could afford back home for Sophie, while juggling household chores like a circus performer deftly spinning plates on poles balanced atop wobbly stands. Sockets pulled tight around his heart began loosening further still. Shades lifted gradually, revealing empathy where once ignorance had flourished unchecked. Vito soon recognized that this investigation served not just to reveal hardship. It blurred boundaries between employer and employee in unexpected ways. The idea crept into his mind slowly but steadily. What if he could help? Could extending support transform their lives without disrupting everything they'd built? As Vito pondered these thoughts, while grappling with newfound understanding about kindness rooted within human connection rather than wealth accumulation alone, plans began forming intricately within him. The desire to invade neither space nor dignity, but instead bring hope into another's reality, stirred fervently beneath layers forged by both privilege and isolation. This investigation wasn't merely an inquiry anymore. It had morphed into something far greater, a chance for redemption hidden within simple acts meant to uplift others whom society often overlooked entirely. Even someone like him, whose life revolved around power, might yet find fulfillment through acts steeped in compassion above all else. After weeks of quiet observation and reflection, Vito Moretti made a decision that would change everything. He resolved to visit Maria's home, the place where the realities of her life unfolded each day beyond the walls of his mansion. The thought of stepping into her world filled him with uncertainty. He recognized he was about to cross a line he had never considered before. As he drove through the bustling streets, the city's vibrant colors blurred into a dull haze. Vito felt an odd mix of excitement and apprehension, like a man preparing for battle. He arrived at Maria's modest apartment complex, a stark contrast to his own lavish estate. The building was small, with peeling paint and an overgrown garden that hinted at neglect. It stood among similar structures, each reflecting stories of families struggling to make ends meet. Vito stepped out of his sleek car, the engine rumbling into silence as he approached the entrance. The worn doormat welcomed him with a faded image barely recognizable under years of foot traffic. He pushed open the door and ascended the narrow staircase, feeling completely out of place in this unfamiliar environment. The scent of something simmering wafted through the air, making his stomach rumble as he noticed bits of cheerful decor. A child's drawing taped haphazardly to the walls and playful stickers dotting the doorframe. When he finally reached Maria's apartment, he hesitated for just a moment, unsure of what lay beyond the threshold. Taking a deep breath, he knocked softly. Almost immediately, the door creaked open to reveal Maria, surprised but clearly pleased to see him. "Signore Moretti," she exclaimed, her eyes widening as she ushered him inside. "What brings you here?" "Maria," Vito began, choosing his words carefully. "I wanted to see how you and Sophie lived." Her smile faltered for an instant, but she quickly regained her composure and invited him in. As he stepped over the threshold, Vito was greeted by an atmosphere that was warm yet laden with struggle. The living space was small, but full of life, with colorful toys scattered across the floor and a table set for dinner, though its contents appeared meager. The walls were painted a soft pastel color, attempting to create a cheerful ambiance despite signs of wear and tear that spoke of constant use. A small couch, patterned with cheerful floral designs, sat facing a television that flickered quietly in one corner. Pictures of Sophie adorned the walls, her artwork bursting with colors, displaying castles and heroes that filled her imaginative mind. Every piece told a story woven with hope and love amid hardship. Vito decided not only to observe, but also to listen as Maria guided him through their home. "Sophie is very proud of her drawings," she said, glancing affectionately at the wall filled with her child's creations. "She loves to draw stories that take her away from all this." At that moment, Vito was struck by how this tiny apartment was alive with dreams and laughter despite its limitations. Yet he also noticed signs of their financial strain. The worn-out furniture, barely stocked kitchen shelves, and the clutter that suggested cleaning had become more than just a daily task. It was a relentless, uphill battle. As they moved toward the small kitchen, Vito couldn't help but observe a pot simmering on the stove. A simple meal, perhaps pasta or soup, but what touched his heart was the faint aroma that spoke of care and love rather than extravagance. There were no lavish meals here, no reminders of wealth. Instead, it felt like nourishment meant to sustain rather than indulge. "Is it just you and Sophie?" Vito asked cautiously, still surveying every corner of their shared space. "Yes," Maria replied softly, her gaze dropping for a moment. "It has always been us." Her voice carried a weight that Vito could sense beneath the surface, a mix of resilience and sorrow intertwined in every syllable. It became apparent to him how much she sacrificed to provide for Sophie while juggling her own emotional burdens. In that instant, Vito realized he had witnessed only fragments of their lives. He had seen Sophie laughing in a worn dress, but had not understood what lay beneath those cheerful smiles. Walking through their home illuminated the truth. This was a life crafted through sheer determination against overwhelming odds, a treasure trove of love amid financial struggle. As Maria served them both simple fruit from a small bowl on the table, Vito felt an unexpected warmth swell within him, an awakening that stirred his heart in ways he hadn't experienced in years. Surrounded by reminders of simplicity and strength, he began contemplating how he might contribute to transforming their reality, rather than merely observing from afar. This visit did more than unveil their struggles. It opened Vito's eyes to the kind of richness that existed far beyond material wealth, a world colored by love and courage thriving against adversity. The connection forged at this moment would propel him into actions he could hardly have imagined before. Decisions that could reshape not only Maria and Sophie's future, but perhaps his own as well. As Vito settled into Maria's small apartment, the warmth enveloped him, but it was quickly mingled with a sense of heaviness that clung to the air like a forgotten secret. He glanced around the modest living space. Everything was simple, yet filled with life. The walls were adorned with Sophie's colorful drawings, showcasing castles and fairies that seemed to leap off the paper. In that moment, he could see just how vivid her imagination was, despite the dull reality surrounding her. But as he scrutinized each corner of their home, stark signs of poverty emerged from beneath layers of pride and resilience. Vito's eyes traveled to the kitchen, where the bare cupboards stood as silent reminders of their financial struggles. He noticed a small bowl sitting on the table filled with fruits, 3 overripe apples and a couple of limp bananas, likely all they had for snacks. A glimpse into their refrigerator revealed a few fading leftovers covered by plastic wrap, echoing tales of meals stretched thin over countless days. The living room bore further witness to their hardships. Worn furniture showed signs of years spent being loved but barely able to hold together under constant use. The couch sagged in the middle, its floral pattern faded to a dull hue. It felt less like a resting place and more like a testament to long nights spent calming little Sophie after a tough day, or sharing stories that masked hunger behind smiles. Despite these signs of struggle surrounding her, Sophie radiated joy even in her threadbare dress that hung loosely from her shoulders. A garment that had once been bright and cheerful, but now looked faded and worn out. As she darted around the space, laughter bubbled forth like sunlight breaking through clouds. Her spirit seemed untouched by despair. In her innocence, she twirled in circles and proclaimed herself a princess with an endless realm of adventure before her. "Look at me," she exclaimed, showing off an imaginary crown made from a paper plate she had decorated with glitter and stickers. To Sophie, everything held possibility. Her laughter mirrored resilience in its purest form, a stark contrast to the beauty of her dreams and the harshness of their lived reality. Vito watched as she flitted about, drawing attention to her surroundings filled with color and whimsy. Each joyful shout tugged at his heartstrings. It struck him just how strong children could be, even when faced with adversity he had only ever heard whispered among adults discussing business ventures or rivalries. In that moment, Vito realized what Maria had sacrificed. Invisible tears shed under the weight of unpaid bills and sleepless nights spent worrying about how to provide for Sophie while coping with loneliness. He saw how she fought fiercely for every small joy they could muster against a backdrop painted by financial strain. Sophie's spirit shone brightly amidst darkness, illuminating truths about love that transcended possessions or wealth, truths that connected them all on deeper levels than he'd ever acknowledged before. How was it possible for this young girl to exude such happiness when so many factors stacked against her? Vito felt his heart swell with conflicting emotions. Admiration for Sophie's resilience mixed with sorrow for both mother and daughter, who endured struggles he couldn't ignore any longer. "Does it ever get hard?" Sophie suddenly asked him, pausing from her dance and looking right into his eyes as though peering into his very soul. A lump formed in his throat as he struggled to find words, instead realizing how easy it was for adults like him to become wrapped in material concerns while forgetting simple joys lay just beyond reach. sometimes it does," he finally whispered softly, while contemplating everything she must not fully understand, yet possessed an innate wisdom beyond any classroom teaching. Just then, Maria entered carrying 2 small plates, each holding remnants of what appeared to be meatballs, alongside an ample serving of spaghetti that seemed almost magical given their situation. "It's not much," she said quietly, while placing dishes before them. But it didn't matter. This humble offering felt rich beyond measure. The aromas filling the air teased Vito's senses like nothing else before. Food prepared with love outweighed any extravagant meal where thoughtfulness might be absent entirely. As they gathered around their small table, cluttered yet alive with laughter, they shared food, and more importantly, connection, as if bridging worlds divided by more than just physical spaces itself. In this moment together, their sanctuary stitched together through hardship, Vito experienced emotions unfurl within him, like blossoms waiting to emerge, despite years buried beneath armor forged through power struggles alone. The truth was now clear. Love held value far greater than anything gilded in gold or wrapped in luxury. Here, amid laughter ringing louder than silence, stood evidence proving happiness could flourish against all odds, even when faced with circumstances bearing unbearable weight upon fragile shoulders. And so began Vito's journey toward discovering what genuine wealth truly meant. Not merely possessions, amassed, but connections built from trust within communities nobody else dared see. It sparked within him aspirations reaching far beyond himself, and more importantly, igniting hopes along the way, destined for those too often overlooked entirely. As Vito sat quietly around the modest table, sharing a simple meal with Maria and Sophie, the weight of all that he had experienced began to settle heavily on his shoulders. Every smile exchanged and every bite shared held profound meaning, awakening something within him that had long been dormant. The laughter resonating within those walls was like a melody he had not heard in years, forcing him to confront a deep truth about himself. In stark contrast to the vibrant life and joy emanating from Maria and Sophie's home, stood Vito's own luxurious lifestyle, a life enveloped in excess, but devoid of emotional richness. Sitting there amid warmth and connection made him reflect not only on who he was, but also on every choice that had led him down a path narrowed by power, money, and ruthless ambition. The ginormous mansion, with its cold marble floors and high ceilings, suddenly felt more like an empty fortress rather than a sanctuary. Lulled by the food's aroma and the tender energy surrounding them, Vito found his thoughts swirling back to moments captured in crystal-clear images. Lavish parties filled with noise that faded into meaningless chatter, expensive suits tailored just right, but wearing heavy burdens concealed beneath layers of fabric. Moments stolen from real human interaction for short bursts of validation. His empire was built on strength and domination, yet here sat a mother and child who wielded love as their greatest power, a force he came to recognize as profoundly more valuable than any empire he could control. He began to see Maria through new eyes, the woman who embodied strength while navigating her world alongside her daughter, despite constant challenges threatening to pull them down. Each tired smile she offered during their conversation spoke volumes about perseverance taught through lived experience, not born from wealth, but from sheer tenacity in times filled with uncertainty. Maria radiated resilience, reminding him of qualities he admired yet often overlooked when wrapped in the guise of ambition. Sophie's innocence punctuated this realization even further. Her ability to find joy amidst adversity illuminated truths that once eluded Vito as he chased shadows instead of light. The little princess dancing before him did not seem daunted at all by her outdated dress. Instead, she did what children do best. She embraced possibility. In her world, dreams were tangible currencies traded freely while navigating hardship without hesitation. How can someone so small carry such strength? Vito wondered aloud, breaking the hush that had settled across the table. Maria looked thoughtfully at him before responding. Children often see possibilities we forget as adults, she replied softly. Sophie has dreams bigger than our current reality. Vito pondered her words carefully. It was true. He too had been blinded by falling into routines driven solely by aspiration, without taking time to stop and enjoy fleeting moments enriched by community or love. This self-reflection marked a pivot point. If small acts filled with kindness could spring forth from those facing trials far greater than his own, how might he reshape his priorities? Beyond the material success that consumed him lay paths unexplored, relationships left unattended, waiting for watering only compassion could nurture into blooming existence once again. With newfound clarity sparkling in his mind like dew-kissed grass under morning light, Vito understood it was time for change. Not just within himself, but within those entirely separate lives tied deeply together in greater networks, powered solely by people willing to uplift one another over repeated cycles society often imposed unjustly upon them. True wealth was about creating opportunities and forming bonds, building networks strengthened by empathy rather than manipulation. As plates emptied, leaving crumbs echoing traces of flavors shared, the heart's connection between them lingered too, intangible threads woven tightly together, enmeshed through laughter, echoed eking out vulnerability, shared among three different worlds, settling seamlessly toward fresh beginnings, awaiting discovery ahead. Deep in thought, yet resurfacing emotions coursing through his heart, led Vito toward a mission, to impact not merely himself, but endorse transformation witnessed among peers as well. Lifting spirits where once only shadows existed, through investments layered thick with hope interwoven into lives deserving dignity essential for flourishing beyond any chains sitting lightly atop shoulders, yearning breathlessly for liberation. For the first time perhaps ever, Vito stood poised, following in footsteps leading toward real success, the kind rooted beyond prisons built upon territory, lined with monuments showcasing greed, replacing fragile connections, meant to spark real change flowing freely beneath emerging foundations, compromising nothing yet gifting everything forward unencumbered forevermore. With a heart now awakened, Vito Moretti found himself navigating uncharted territory, one where compassion and empathy took precedence over power and wealth. As he left Maria and Sophie's small apartment that evening, the experience echoed in his mind, igniting a sense of urgency to change their circumstances for the better. The very next day, Vito convened a meeting with his trusted associates, but this time, the agenda centered not on business dealings or financial conquests, but rather on how he could support Maria and her daughter. He looked around the room, assessing each face that had previously only been a tapestry woven into his world of crime and profit. He realized that this was not just about charity. It was about creating change in their community, a ripple effect that could foster hope amidst darkness. Listen, Vito began, his voice firm yet vulnerable. We're going to set up a fund dedicated to helping employees in tough situations. The men exchanged puzzled glances, surprised at their boss's sudden turn from strictly financial matters to personal ones. What do you mean, boss? One of his associates finally asked. I mean, we will start by supporting Maria and her daughter. This isn't just about giving them money. We will assist them with resources more than they could dream of, like food, educational opportunities for Sophie, and new clothes. The room fell silent as Vito continued, explaining his vision for creating stability within their community. He pointed out how true strength lies not just in wielding power, but also in lifting others up. Slowly, they began to understand that this initiative could bolster not only their employees' lives, but also the reputation of Vito's establishment in the long run. The following week was filled with steps to implement Vito's dreams into reality. Money flowed, not just as charity, but as an investment into the very fabric of their community. They arranged for a weekly delivery of groceries directly to Maria's doorstep, ensuring she would never again have to worry about sparse meals while caring for Sophie. Vito also engaged local educators, arranging for Sophie's enrollment in a better school where she could thrive. Inspired by the child's artistic spirit, he even authorized art supplies and tutoring sessions to nourish her creativity. An initial reluctance nestled within him, visiting a school filled with children displaying laughter, innocence, and purpose. But he soon erased that thought, understanding he must step outside his comfort zone. But it didn't stop there. Determined to show his compassion beyond mere resources, Vito invited Maria and Sophie to his home for dinner periodically, transforming what was once solely a transactional relationship into one built on trust and connection. These gatherings were filled with laughter as stories were shared around opulent tables overflowing with delicious food prepared with care. Maria displayed gratitude with every visit while maintaining her modesty. "You really don't have to do this," she would say shyly, before being swept up in conversation and laughter with Sophie nestled beside her, bridging between two vastly different worlds. In those interactions, Vito discovered untold feelings he had suppressed for far too long. The joy in witnessing others flourish superseded any hollow compliments thrown at him over cigars and whiskey back in his mansion. As the weeks progressed, changes began to unfold within him as well. The notion of reaching out into the lives of his employees became personal, a mission drawn from understanding instead of obligation. Vito engaged with others within his domain who needed help. Providing resources did not weaken his stature among peers, but fortified connections built through kindness instead. It was during one impactful afternoon filled with sunlight that they reintroduced the concept of community gatherings among employees. At first hesitant, but gaining momentum through encouragement from Vito himself, laughter echoed around playful games for children, alongside shared stories meant to uplift one another. It marked not only progress among their networks, but also inspired broader initiatives within their lives, where none existed before. During these interactions, the once frightening Mafia boss now stood as an ally, someone deeply committed to nurturing love across divides he had previously forged, out of self-interest and material gain alone. Proof lay within achievements birthed through unity as seeds cultivated together flourished into gardens vibrant among fading streets often overlooked entirely. Through simple acts steeped in generosity, Vito witnessed transformation unfold before him. A mother with renewed hope opening doors wider alongside her daughter, oblivious to anything but dreams waiting just beyond grasp. Opportunities patiently awaiting budding partnerships ready to erupt into reality, sprouting vigorously against all odds surrounding them. This evolving narrative reminded Vito of something invaluable: the importance of igniting ember-like connections, blossoming into wildflowers, spanning ever-closer communities, thriving boldly through fierce complexities and raw transparencies shared forever entwined. Ultimately, the shift towards assistance became a metamorphosis, catalyzing his own renegotiation of success. No longer concentrated solely upon pale accomplishments gripped by shadows forged under hardened facades, but rather rooted deeply within vibrant lives emerging from hidden depths, yearning brightly toward another day, just waiting patiently yet grandly along horizon lines, cascading between hearts of many transformed alongside just one solitary act. As the weeks unfolded, the bond between Vito Moretti and Maria grew deeper, enriched by acts of kindness and genuine understanding. Vito was no longer just Maria's employer. He had become a source of support and encouragement, transforming their dynamic from one built on obligation to one grounded in mutual respect and trust. Initially, Maria approached their new relationship with caution. She would often thank Vito for the assistance he provided, but remained hesitant to allow herself to lean on him too heavily. "You don't have to do this," she would say with a smile, trying to downplay his generous gestures. But Vito could see that her eyes reflected gratitude often mixed with disbelief. It was a subtle reminder of how accustomed she had become to navigating life's challenges alone. One soft autumn evening, as the leaves swirled around their feet in vibrant hues of orange and red, Vito invited Maria and Sophie to his mansion for dinner, again. As they entered the grand foyer adorned with chandeliers, Maria's expression managed to convey both wonder and unease. It was clear this world felt foreign and intimidating, yet Vito took her hand gently, guiding her through the opulence with a warmth she hadn't expected. Dinner that night was unlike any other they had shared. Vito seated them at his dining table, a place where high-profile guests would often gather for lavish banquets. But tonight was different. He wanted this evening to feel like home for them, so he arranged a spread of simple yet flavorful dishes inspired by Maria's own cooking. And as they began to eat, Sophie's laughter echoed against the walls, infusing the space with joy that melted away any remaining tension. As they chatted over dinner, Vito noticed the way Maria's laughter sparkled amidst sharing stories about her childhood and her hopes for Sophie's future. In those moments, vulnerability crept between them, a thread pulling them closer together. Slowly but surely, they began sharing not just their circumstances but their dreams and fears. The conversation flowed easily, as if they were old friends reuniting after years apart. "Do you ever think about what you want for yourself?" Vito asked one evening as they finished dessert, a warm smile curling on his lips. Maria paused for a moment, clearly taken aback by the question. "I just want Sophie to have everything I didn't," she replied earnestly. "A chance to explore her talents without limits." Vito nodded thoughtfully. He could see the fierce protection she felt for her daughter reflected in her eyes. More than ever, it sparked within him a longing to help shape those possibilities into reality. Not just for Sophie, but for families like hers who were often overlooked. In return, Maria began to see beyond the imposing persona of the Mafia boss she had initially known. She began to recognize the softer side of him, the man who genuinely cared about others' well-being, who refused to be confined by his past choices alone. Even during their most casual conversations about daily life, there was an unspoken bond growing stronger with each shared experience. One day, while running errands for his business, Vito found himself approaching a local art supply store. Inspired by Sophie's artistic spirit, he decided to purchase various art supplies as a surprise gift for her, a gesture meant to nurture her creativity further. As he walked through the aisles picking items that reminded him of her drawings, colorful paints, sketch pads, and unique crafting tools, he felt invigorated by the thought of brightening her day. When he presented these gifts to Sophie later that week during one of their dinners together, her eyes widened with delight. "You got this for me?" she exclaimed in disbelief, cradling the supplies as if they were precious treasures. "Of course. I know how much you love creating," he replied with an encouraging smile. Over time, these simple moments fostered trust and understanding between Vito and Maria as well. They shared not only laughter, but also challenges faced. Vito became someone Maria could confide in about her worries regarding work-life balance or educational decisions for Sophie. Conversations once reserved only for fleeting moments shared over hurried breakfast shifts in his mansion. In turn, Maria inspired Vito daily. She showed him how resilience thrived even amidst hidden struggles that shape individuals into who they are meant to become, reminding him that empathy held value greater than money within transactional relationships previously formed solely from selfish incentives. The barriers separating their worlds continued to fade as heartfelt connections replaced formality. Each dinner became an opportunity for growth, rather than mere sustenance shared among employer and employee. Profound exchanges forged through mutual respect, blossoming into friendship slowly yet steadily gracing lives touched deeply across lines once drawn. Through acts of kindness intertwined within understanding and vulnerability emerged what felt like a family. A bond formed not from blood, but something much stronger. Love nurtured toward lives different yet somehow tied together within spinning cycles, holding everyone tightly bound amid hope brewed indefinitely onward. As Vito Moretti stood at the threshold of his mansion, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed since that first moment he noticed Sophie wearing the same worn dress for 47 days. It was a simple observation that had catalyzed a profound transformation within him, opening his heart in ways he never thought possible. The image of Sophie twirling joyfully in her faded garment had become a pivotal moment in his life, one that challenged his understanding of wealth, success, and what it truly meant to be human. In reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point, Vito marveled at how compassion and generosity could flourish even in unexpected places. Maria and Sophie were not just employees. They had become part of something greater, a community woven together by shared experiences and acts of kindness. Their lives illuminated the power of connection and the transformative impact it could have on individuals who once lived isolated from each other. Initially driven by curiosity about their struggles, Vito had embarked on a mission to help Maria and Sophie that gradually evolved into so much more. His efforts to provide them with resources, food, educational opportunities for Sophie, and even art supplies had opened doors not just for their future, but also for his own growth. The relationships he nurtured were built on trust rather than dominance, allowing vulnerability to seep in where previously there had only been walls fortified by power. Each dinner shared at Vito's mansion became an opportunity to foster deeper connections. With every laugh exchanged and every story told, he learned more about Maria's resilience and Sophie's dreams. They spoke openly about their challenges and aspirations, weaving a tapestry of understanding that transcended their disparate backgrounds. Vito found himself inspired by their spirit. The bond they shared became a source of strength for him as well. With each act of kindness extended toward them, Vito saw how it sparked ripples beyond just the immediate effects on Maria and Sophie. Other employees began to notice the shift in his demeanor, witnessing firsthand how compassion reshaped his leadership style. As Vito engaged more deeply with those around him, friendships blossomed among colleagues who once felt distant or marginalized. The sense of community flourished as walls fell away, relationships formed based on empathy rather than hierarchy. He understood now that generosity was not merely an obligation, but a privilege, a way to elevate others while nurturing one's own spirit. Acts of kindness provided a sense of purpose far beyond any criminal empire he had built. They breathed life into both his heart and those who received it. One evening after another lively dinner where laughter filled the air like music, Vito sat alone in his study, reflecting on everything he had learned from Maria and Sophie. He realized that their influence on him reached far beyond material gifts or financial support. They taught him how love could transform lives even amidst hardship. The once intimidating world outside no longer felt so daunting. Instead, it seemed full of potential waiting to be explored through bonds forged by compassion. He envisioned a future where communities thrived not just through prosperity, but through shared humanity. A vision rooted deeply within experiences encountered alongside Maria and Sophie. In those quiet moments alone with thoughts unfurling like petals opening under sunlight, Vito recognized that true wealth did not reside in opulent mansions or lavish parties, but rather lay within hearts willing to give without asking anything in return. He felt empowered by this revelation, a newfound clarity guiding him toward creating opportunities for others who struggled against adversity. Thus began a new chapter for Vito Moretti, not solely as a powerful mafia boss commanding respect through fear, but as an advocate for change, igniting hope across divides too often overlooked entirely. He resolved to build programs dedicated to uplifting others in similar situations, as Maria's family, initiatives focused on education, mental health support, and basic needs, transforming lives one act at a time. Ultimately, the simple observation of a child wearing the same dress for nearly 50 days sparked an unforeseen journey toward kindness, reminding Vito that compassion knows no bounds and can thrive even amidst darkness. Each action became ripples cascading outward, connecting lives interwoven together between stories filled with dreams waiting patiently, yet boldly upon horizon lines stretching endlessly ahead.